And this is how it turned out. And now it's time to take it to the dress. So this dress seems pretty simple. It's basically a tube top, like a black tube top dress. And then it has like the black maxi gloves, and then it also has like a white bow at the front. I see that it has a zipper in the back. So my thinking is, if I go to the thrift store and I can find a black tube top dress that fits me, that'll be A1. But if I don't find a black dress that already fits me, then the other alternative would be to look for a black maxi dress, and preferably one that's stretchy, so that way I don't have to worry about adding the zipper. And then from there, I can just kind of size it down to like fit my body. And then for the bow tie, I'm thinking that I can just find like white fabric, so anything that's white, and then just make the bow from that white fabric. Then for the gloves, they kind of remind me of like pantyhose. So I might try to see if I can just find some pantyhose and then try to find a way to make gloves from it. The only thing I'm a little concerned about is like the fingers part, but I'll come up with something. All right, let's go to the thrift store. So I tried to record myself at the thrift store, but then this happened. So there goes that. Okay, so I'm back from the thrift store and I wanted to show you what I got. So this is the first dress. I paid $5 for it. I got this dress here, but I'm really just gonna be using this dress, like the fabric, to make the bow that's gonna go like at the top of the dress. And then I got these stockings for $1. And I'm gonna use these stockings to make the gloves. And I have an idea in mind for what I wanna do, so I'm kinda excited to try it out to see if my idea is gonna work. Let me show you the other stuff that I got that I just couldn't resist, couldn't help myself. It's not a whole lot, it's just 2 other things. I got this skirt here. It's so cute. And this was only $5 too. Then I got these shoes. And I didn't even intentionally say like, oh, let me find some shoes to match your skirt. Like I just saw them and was like, oh my gosh, those are so cute. And I feel like this summer I really want to wear like a lot of like pink and orange to really like bring out my girly side. So yeah, let me know if you think they're cute. So this is what the dress looks like on. And my plan is to cut a straight line across the armhole, like underneath the armhole. So I'm going to start by folding the dress in half and making sure that the side seams line up on top of each other, so that way the cut is going to be even. And then I'm just cutting straight across with my rotary cutter. So I turned the dress right side out and I tried it on. So you can see now it's basically a tube. And then I started kind of sizing it down so that it fits closer to my body. But I was struggling with this, so I was like, you know what, let me do this off camera and come back. But this is what it looks like once I started putting in like the first few pins along the side of my body. So I just continued pinching the side of the dress and pinning it down with the safety pin. And I just continued doing this all along the length of the side of the dress. I didn't do this for the full length of the dress. I only did it about 5 pins on each side. After that, I took the dress off and then I just traced over where the safety pins are. And then when I got to the last safety pin, I just drew a straight line all the way down to the bottom of the dress. And I really just eyeballed it, but it doesn't really matter because I'm going to be shortening the dress anyway. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't making the bottom too narrow. After that, I removed all of the safety pins and then I folded the dress in half so that the side seams were stacked on top of each other. And I just really took my time making sure that the layers were flat and even. And then I used a ruler to add a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance line outside of the original line that I drew. And then I just cut all the way down on top of the seam allowance line. Then I stacked the 2 layers on top of each other with right sides facing. And starting from the bottom edge, I just started pinning the 2 layers together along the side seam. And then I repeated the same step along the other side of the dress. Then I took a piece of elastic that's about the same measurement as the circumference of the top of the dress, and I'm basically just gonna line it up to the top edge of the dress. And when I stitch it, I'm gonna use a zigzag stitch, and I'm gonna make sure to pull both layers, so pull the elastic and the dress itself while I stitch. To reduce bulking at the side seams, instead of putting my elastic at the very edge of the side of the dress, I put it about 3/8 of an inch out from the edge, so that way when I sew along the side seams, it's not going to be bulky because of the elastic. In terms of machine settings, I set my machine to a zigzag stitch, and the width was about 4.5, and then I used the longest stitch length. Since my dress isn't yet connected at the side seams, I used 2 pieces of elastic, one for the front panel of the dress and one for the back panel of the dress. This is how the top edge of my dress came out with the elastic installed. The next thing I'm going to do is just sew along the side seams using a zigzag stitch. After that, I tried on my dress to see how it was fitting, and this is what it was looking like. And then I wanted to shorten my dress, so I just kind of took the bottom and folded it up where I wanted it to end. I had to like take a look in the mirror to make sure that I was happy with the length. And then I just used the safety pin to pin it in place, and then I used chalk to mark where the fold was, and it looked like this. Then I took the dress off, and then I just took the safety pins out, and then I folded the dress so that the side seams were lined up on top of each other. And then I just made sure that the layers were all flat, because once it's time for me to cut it, like I want to make sure that everything will be cut evenly. So once all the layers were flat, I just took a ruler and measured 1 inch below the mark that I made, because that 1 inch is going to be for seam allowance. And I just drew a straight line across connecting that mark. And because I want the back to be longer, I'm just going to make a mark 1 inch below the seam allowance line, and then I'm just gonna draw like a curved line to make the back of the dress longer. And because the back of the dress is gonna be longer, the line that I'm drawing now is gonna be the fold line, so I had to draw another line underneath that to be the actual seam allowance for the back of the dress. So I just kind of measured and marked 1 inch below that line, and then drew like a seam allowance line mimicking the fold line above it. So this line here is going to be the seam allowance for the full dress for both the front and the back, and then this line here is going to be the fold line for the back of the dress, and this area here will be the fold line for the front of the dress. I hope this makes sense, but I think once I cut it, you'll understand what I'm describing. So that's exactly what I did. I just cut along that seam allowance line, which is basically this line here and the bottom line for the back part of the dress. Then I separated the bottom part that I just cut, and I put that aside. I think maybe some point later I might make something with it, maybe like a tube top or something, I don't know, but that's out of the way. So now getting back to the main part of the dress. So then I took out the pins, and I just refolded it so that like the front layer is on top of the back layer, and you can see here that the back part of the dress is a bit longer and curved as opposed to the front part, which is shorter. The next thing that I planned to do was to close the slit in the back. I'm literally going to put the 2 pieces together like this, and then just do a zigzag stitch to keep them attached together. From there, the next thing I did was I just serged all around the bottom edge. And if you don't have a serger, you can just like do a zigzag stitch, but I wanted to do a serged edge to make it look nice and clean. And technically I should have serged the elastic. Like now when I look back at it, I'm like, dang, this looks a little bit like janky, but it's okay. I don't plan on like selling this or anything like that. It's just for me, so it's okay. So anyway, after I serged the bottom edge, it looks something like this. So the next thing I am going to do is I'm just going to fold where I had marked the dress originally, so basically 1 inch above the bottom edge of the dress. I'm just gonna fold 1 inch up and then pin it down and iron it so that it's nice and flat for when I stitch the bottom hem. And this is what the dress looked like after I stitched the bottom. And then I measured how wide and how long I wanted the bow tie to be. And then I took that white dress that I showed you at the beginning of this video that I thrifted. I turned it inside out, and then I drafted a rectangle that's the same width and length as the measurements I just took for my bow. I added seam allowance to my patterns, so the final measurements came out to be 13 inches wide and 7 inches long. After that, I pinned both layers of the fabric down in place, and then I cut all around the rectangle. And then after that, it looks something like this. And then the next thing I did was I stitched along the seam allowance line, and I left a small opening along the corner of the rectangle so that I could flip it inside out. So it looks something like this. And then I took my scissors and I just clipped off the corners so that when I turn it inside out, the corners will be pointy. So starting at the area where I didn't stitch, I turned the rectangle inside out by basically just forcing all of the fabric through that opening until all of the fabric was right side out. Then to close the corner of the rectangle, I just tucked the raw edges inward so that the seam allowance part of the fabric is inside of the rectangle. Then after that, I'm just going to do a top stitch to seal in that corner. And this is what it looked like when I finished stitching. And this is an idea of how the bow is starting to form. We're gonna need a middle piece that's going to cinch the rectangle to create the actual bow. I cut out a 2.5 by 3 inch rectangle. I just did a zigzag stitch all around the rectangle or the square. And then after that, I folded in the longer side of the square, and then after that I took the square and I wrapped it around the center part of the rectangle. I pinned the two ends of the square together, and then I'm going to do a zigzag stitch where the flap is. Also, this flap will be what I use to connect the bow to the top of the dress later on. And this is how it turned out. And now it's time to take it to the dress. So what I did was I looked at the picture to see how the bow was placed, and it looks like the top edge of the bow is lined up with the top edge of the dress. So that's what I did, and I just kind of pinned it down in place since I'm going to be hand stitching the bow. You could definitely sew the bow with your sewing machine, but I didn't want anything too permanent, so that's why I chose to hand stitch it. So after I pinned the bow down to my dress, I took some needle and thread and I started with one corner of the bow. I started inside of my dress and I just pulled the needle through back and forth to secure the bow, and I think I only did like 2 stitches to keep it in place. And I'm going to repeat the same step on the other side of the bow. And then for the center of the bow, as I mentioned earlier, that extra flap of fabric is where I'm going to be stitching the bow to the top of the dress. And if you're using a sewing machine, you can definitely use that extra flap of fabric as well to stitch it to the dress. Okay, so these are the tights that I told you in the beginning of the video that I got from the thrift store. And I'm just realizing that they actually say footless tights, which I think might actually work in my favor. So I'm going to show you what I had in mind in terms of how to make the gloves. Since these are footless, they have this little band at the end. And I think that this band is basically what's going to help the glove to stay on my biceps. So my thinking is I'm going to stick my hand in here as though it's already a glove. Damn, this is tight. Imagine this going on a leg. It's going on my little arm and it's tight. Imagine it on a calf. Anyway, so it's in there. This is what the glove will be like. And then my thinking was I could trace where my fingers are and then just sew where I trace. So let's see if that works. Here I am just tracing over my fingers and praying to God that this actually works.
And then I was like, all right, let me take the glove off to see how the tracing is looking. And some of the tracing got a little bit distorted and kind of like blurred out. So I was like, all right, let me just retrace over it with the chalk. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe if I put the cardboard from the packaging inside of the stockings, it'll help to keep the like drawing flat and kind of stretched out. So this is what it looked like. And I was like, all right, now I'm just going to stitch over the lines. So I took it to the machine. I started stitching over the lines and it was going great until this is the thumb, index, middle, ring, and this pinky finger that I'm sewing right now, because it's on the edge of the card and the card is already stitched down into the fingers, I'm not sure how I'm gonna stitch that pinky. So I think I'm just gonna take it out, cut out the card, and then maybe see if I can like reposition it. So let's see if that works. Okay, so I'm back. this this is how far I got. Some of the paper is still in there, and I tried using a tweezer and that did not work. So I'm gonna call it quits, but let me know in the comments if you think there's something else I should have done or tried, because it feels like it had potential. Like, look at my thumb, my whole thumb is in here. And my plan was to have just cut like the outside and then flip this inside out so that the seam would be on the wrong side and you wouldn't see it. But yeah, this paper is like stopping this whole thing. So this is the reveal. I didn't do hair and makeup and all the normal stuff that I like to do at the reveal, but I really just wanted you to see how the dress came out. So in case you're wondering, this is what it looked like. There's still some finishing touches. Like I need to fix the hem at the back, at the bottom, obviously. And yeah, it's a little bit shorter than I bargained for, but I think I'll probably give it away or something. So yeah, but overall, like, you know, you can definitely follow the same steps that I took to get the same outcome. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I'll see you in the next one.